I'm going to call to order this Lacey City Council meeting on October 25th, 2018. Can everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So, can I get a motion to approve tonight's agenda and consent agenda items?
I move that we approve the agenda and consent agenda items.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. We have an agenda. And first up on our agenda is public comment on items not on the agenda. So these would be comments on anything but the city manager budget presentation. So given that, we have had a few people signed up. Can the first person sign up, Berthe? Oh. Can you please state your...
Is this working?
Yep.
It is, I guess.
Yeah, please
Good,
state your
thank
full
you.
name and keep your comments about 3 minutes.
Okay. My name is Bortai Hargrove, and tonight I'm representing Clean Energy Thurston. Last week, the IPCC, the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, issued a special report confirming what recent scientific studies have concluded, that we have 12 years or less to reduce our carbon emissions as close to zero as possible. The biggest obstacle to reducing Thurston County's carbon emissions is Puget Sound Energy. PSE's current energy mix is 59% from fossil fuels, and its 20-year integrated resource plan indicates that it plans to run its coal strip coal plant through 2035 and replace diminished coal use with natural gas. PSE's 20-year plan will lock Thurston County and its other customers into decades of fossil fuel use. Our Thurston PUD and each of Thurston County's 4 cities have the power to form a publicly owned electric utility powered by renewable energy to replace PSE. 1, 2, or more of our cities can join together to develop a public electric utility. Once a public electric utility has acquired PSE's lines and facilities through an eminent domain proceeding or negotiation, or has a contract to do so, it has a preferential right to purchase low-cost hydropower from the Bonneville Power Authority, BPA. The BPA also sells public electric utilities power from other renewables, such as solar and wind. This is our chance to form a public electric utility powered by hydro and other clean energy. If we start now, we could bring our carbon emissions from electricity down from 59% to less than 10% within 5 years. This is a tremendous opportunity. We are fortunate to live in the Pacific Northwest, where it is still possible for a public electric utility to purchase low-cost, clean energy from the BPA. And it may be the only way we can reduce Thurston County's carbon emissions to near zero in the next 12 years. But we have to begin the process now. Lacey needs to take a leading role. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Janet Jordan. Just please state your full name and keep your comments about 3 minutes.
Hello, I'm Janet Jordan, and I'd like to talk about public power also. We didn't always have the ability to create our own power through our own governing bodies. We got the authority to do so in 1930, at the end of the progressive era, in which reforms happened thick and fast. People were tired of government corruption and wanted the government instead to provide service to the people, and they made it happen. Schools, libraries, roads, food safety, programs for youth and mothers all sprouted in this era. All of these public systems are under attack now, but they are needed more than ever. Another feature of that era was growing fear and resentment of monopolies, including railroads in particular, but also giant investor-owned utilities like power companies. PSE, for example, is the result of 150 different mergers over the years. Public power was a way to be free of monopoly control. Citizens were eager for the switch to public power. In Clallam County, customers were so eager that in some very rural sections, the customers cleared the rights-of-way and dug the pole holes themselves. The Bonneville Power Project was created in 1937 to generate power from the Columbia River and others, quote, for the benefit of the general public, unquote, that is, for public power systems, with the understanding that public power provided benefits that investor-owned utilities did not. This was the spirit of the progressive movement in action. Please look at the map I have provided of the counties that have public power. This map is a simplified one in that some of the county public utility districts, or PUDs, do not serve a whole county. Some of the empty spots are filled in by city PUDs, and some of the county-wide PUDs are supplemented by rural electricity, which is another form of public power. But with all this, you can see how pervasive public power is throughout the state. 27 counties of 39 have operating PUDs. 24 have electricity. 18 cities have their own power. In the counties surrounding Thurston, Mason County has 2 PUDs, one for water and electric, and one for fiber optic and electric. Lewis County has public power. Pierce and King counties do not have county-wide service, but Tacoma has public power, and Seattle has Seattle City Light. The map is a testimonial to the public's wish to provide itself with what it needs and not be dependent on a private power source that exists to make itself a profit. In Thurston County, the Lacey Olympia-Tumwater area is ready for taking control of its own power needs, including a switch to clean power and lower prices over the years. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, is it Pat Delaney? Or, okay. Again, please state your full name and keep your comments about 3 minutes.
My full name is Patricia Delaney. I'm here also on behalf of Clean Energy Thurston to invite you to a community forum on how we can develop a public electric utility powered by renewable energy. You have an invitation in your packet, but that event will be on November 10th at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation on Division in Olympia from 1 to 5. The speakers will be Randall Samstag, an environmental engineer, Jim Lazar, an economist, Stephen Johnson, executive director of the Washington Public Utility Association for more than 20 years, and Barney Burke, who was the Jefferson County PUD commissioner. If you want to learn more, that's a great event to go to. So I'd like to introduce you now to the Raging Grannies.
The Raging Grannies are also going to perform a song about public power tonight, about the glories and the blessings of public power. And this is our version of Roll On, Columbia, Roll On by
Woody Guthrie.
Okay.
With lyrics by the Grannies. Roll on, Columbia, roll on. Roll on, Columbia, roll on. Your banner is turning our darkness to dawn. Roll on, Columbia, roll on. PSE's running on coal and on gas. Looks like their fossil fuel habit will last. We'd like to switch over to clean energy. and make a clean break with the past. With one bold move, we can dump PSC, acquire all their lines and facilities. Let's put our power under public control. Clean energy's always our goal. Roll on, Columbia, roll on. Roll on, Columbia, roll on. Clean power is turning our darkness to dawn. Roll on, Columbia, roll on. Renewable power surrounds us today. Pierce, Lewis, and Mason have all shown the way. Our town council members just have to vote. We're all in the very same boat. We can improve matters in our cities by taking on PSC's facilities. The lights and the stove, the toaster and drill would get power from our Bonneville. Join us. Roll on, Columbia, roll on. Roll on, Columbia, roll on. Clean energy's turning our darkness to dawn. Roll on, Columbia, roll on. The Columbia River belongs to us all. Its energy flows like a great waterfall. Its turbines spin for us, they call and they sing of the blessings clean energy brings. For zero emissions, we're acting right here to help turn the tide in less than 12 years. Let's all share the vision and do what we can for the power and survival of man. Roll on, Columbia, roll on. Roll on, Columbia, roll on. The energy's turning our darkness to dawn. Roll on, Columbia, roll on.
Thank you.
I'm speaking next to us.
Mr. Mayor, I know we don't normally take comments during public comment, but I would like to say a couple things. First of all, November 10th is Marine Corps birthday, and a lot of us will be down at the National League of Cities. I don't know if you guys will be streaming live or something, your event that you're having. And then also a comment on the, I believe that's Our Little Gun 3 song. I remember Alice's Restaurant, but I don't remember that song.
I'm speaking next, that's why I'm here.
State your full name and keep your comments to about 3 minutes.
Thank you, sir. I'm Holly Gwynn Graham. Hi, everybody. I'm here tonight to address Mayor Ryder and all of you fine council people and everybody else concerning joining Mayors for Peace. Mayors for Peace was founded in 1982. It's an international organization created by the mayors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki for the realization of lasting world peace. It works for a world free of safe, or a world of safe, resilient cities, free of nuclear weapons. We don't want a world free of safe, resilient cities. That's a typo. Sorry about that. Mayors for Peace has grown to include 7,650 cities in 163 countries, and regions, with 213 U.S. members, representing a total of over 1 billion people. Mayors for Peace aims to enroll 10,000 member cities by 2020, which is the 75th anniversary of the U.S. bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. In Olympia, Mayor Stephen Buxbaum was a mayor for peace, and Olympia remains a member city. Mayor Cheryl Selby has announced intentions to join. We are asking Mayor Ryder and the present council members to join and help reach this member city goal by endorsing the U.S. Conference of Mayors resolution, calling on the administration and Congress to step back from the brink and exercise global leadership in preventing nuclear war, or perhaps just to issue a mayoral proclamation endorsing this resolution. And the complete resolution is included in a packet given to you, Mayor Ryder, along with other pertinent materials. The USCM is nonpartisan. It includes 1,408 American cities with populations of over 30,000 and has unanimously adopted Mayors for Peace resolutions for the last consecutive 13 years. we request perhaps that Lacey also consider being a host to the upcoming art exhibit called 50 Cities, 50 Traces Against Traceless Oblivion, which has been originated in Germany and is now touring the United States. With the president abrogating the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, we stand at the brink of another Cold War and a reckless arms race with Russia, China, and other countries that do not want a return to the bad old days of fear, despair, megadeath, and wasted money. Peace is everyone's issue, no matter where we are. There are many opportunities for our good council members and our good mayors to step up and stand forth. Thank you for considering joining Mayors for Peace in the name of peace, sanity, and love. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Is there anyone else wishing to address the council? Okay. Carolyn? Please state your full name and keep your comments about 3 minutes.
My name is Carolyn Treadway. I live in Panorama in Lacey, and I have seen you before. I'm here to thank you again for voting yes for Phase 2 of the Climate Mitigation Plan. That was the last council meeting I attended, and I really am very thankful that you all said yes. And I'd also like you to consider taking action way before Phase 2 is all figured out and all in place. And I belong to various organizations, including Carbon Free Thurston, that have been talking about what are some of the things that could go into place right away as actions on behalf of the climate while all the structures and everything are being worked out for Phase 2. We can't afford to wait another 18 months or 20 months or something to get going. So we've come up with ideas like community solar and renewable energy projects, Revive Thurston Energy Program, home building energy efficiency retrofits, put in EV charging stations, put in a pilot project to demonstrate net zero energy building, have energy in the districts, have landlord incentives, adopt more demanding energy codes for all non-residential buildings, support and start neighborhood climate action groups, create green neighborhood grant programs. And we also would like to see you including and incorporating climate change issues in your state legislative agenda as you work with the state legislature. Be sure to give climate a big focus. And on, but that's enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to address the council on any items not on the agenda? Well, seeing none, we are going to take just a 2-minute or so break, and we'll let the city manager get set up for his presentation. So I will just close this meeting for a couple minutes. So I'm going to call this meeting back into order, and I will turn it over to our city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Citizens of Lacey, Honorable Mayor and City Council and City staff, the proposed 2019 Lacey City budget carries forward the community priorities established by the City Council and identifies the funds necessary to deliver the programs and services to the City of Lacey. More importantly, the 2019 Lacey City budget is balanced. It's worth noting the overall U.S. economy is in the 112th month of expansion. This is the longest expansion since post-World War II. Earlier this year, the Lacey community reached a population milestone with an official count of 50,170 residents. In the last 10 years, Lacey experienced an approximately 27.8% change in population. In comparison, the city's workforce during the same time frame grew from 252 full-time employees to 260 full-time employees, an increase of only 3.4%. This disparity requires a reinvestment in the city's workforce to ensure services and programs can be maintained at appropriate levels. As a result, the core of the 2019 proposed budget focuses on increasing personnel resources dedicated to serving the Lacey community. So before I begin, I want to point out this picture. This picture was sent to us by Jessica Ruse, a Lacey resident who posted this on Facebook. And this is a picture of Willamette in Northeast Lacey. And we asked for permission, and we've made this the cover of our budget book as well as the backdrop to our city budget for 2019. So we appreciate that. So let's talk about some budget fundamentals. So the 2019 proposed total budget is $114 million. Last year's budget was $143 million, so this is a slight decrease compared to last year, 0.61% to be exact. The City of Lacey can separate this budget in 29 specific funds, but really they can be separated in 6 major components. I'd like to go through those. First is the general fund. This is 35% of our total budget. This fund accounts for all the city's basic community services such as police, planning, parks, streets, and public administration. Capital projects makes up about 11% of our total budget, which is comprised of the arterial street fund, the TBD, CDBG, building improvements, parks and open space fund, and capital expenditures for the RAC. Special funds really consist of just 2 funds. That's the Hicks Lake Management District that was created almost 2 years ago, and also the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee Fund. That's about 0.5% of the budget. Debt is less than 2% of the total budget, which includes all voter-approved debt, as well as debt associated with the RAC and the utilities. Utility funds is really the largest portion of the city budget, about 49% of the total budget. That is the combined water, wastewater, stormwater, as reclaimed water. And then internal service funds within the city, this is how we track our expenditures for information services and also our equipment rental fund, which is basically our city fleet. That's about 4% of the total budget. So just a comparison in terms of the changes from the previous budget to this year's budget. So the general fund is up $724,000. This is partly attributed to the number of resources when it comes to adding personnel to the city, but it's also offset by one-time expenditures associated with our strategic investment fund that we spent $910,000 last year on. Capital projects is relatively flat. This is really a situation where we finished the Hogan Bay widening project, but that offset is increased by the Transportation Benefit District, which will be spending well over $6 million this year in 2019. Special funds is relatively flat, but this again is the Hicks Lake, which has about a $50,000 annual budget, and also an LTAC, which we're using about $85,000 in reserves to fund 21 partnerships. And then debt is essentially unchanged. Utility funds is really a matter of capital. That's why you're seeing the $764,000 delta. We're pivoting really for more wastewater projects from the 2018 to 2019 year. Last year we had about $16 million in wastewater project. This year we have about 13.5, and that actually makes up some of that difference. And then the final, got ahead of myself, the final internal service funds is our capital purchases in our city fleet. We had actually some very large purchases last year. We had a VACON truck as well as a street sweeper. We have some large expenditures this year, but that's the reason why you're seeing a slight decrease from 2018 to 2019. So when we talk about the budget, really a major and primary influence of our budget is about economics and about growth in the city of Lacey. And I want to go through about 4 or 5 slides that just kind of talks about the economics and what's driving the city of Lacey budget. So this is a chart of our assessed value of the city of Lacey. We are now $6.3 billion in terms of assessed value. That is taking all the commercial property, residential property, and that is basically what the city of Lacey is worth in terms of total dollars. You may notice that in 2013 was our lowest point. Although the Great Recession ended in 2009, Washington lagged behind as well as the city of Lacey. But you can see that delayed effect, and it's taken a while for us to get out of that Great Recession. New construction is kind of a subcomponent of the assessed valuation. This is all the new construction that's added on an annual basis from a property tax standpoint. So as you can see in, say, 2012, we added $64 million of new building property values within the city of Lacey. If you look at the last 2 years, this is a direct result of all the commercial construction that we're seeing in Northeast Lacey. So as you see, $185 million is projected for this year. So again, when you kind of break that down even further, this is the commercial development that we're seeing within the city of Lacey. The last 3 years highlights really the strength of the commercial activity. 3.2 million square feet of construction or commercial development has occurred since 2016. 2016 saw the construction of a 700,000 square foot facility called Medline. The following year, IDS built a large 900,000 square foot building under one roof. And this year, commercial permits have almost doubled from 19 to 33, and the year's not over yet. And one indicator of the strength of the market, we have a developer that's built over a 300,000 square foot building without a tenant. So again, they're building speculative warehouse that shows you that they think the market is strong, at least for the next couple of years. So new homes has always been a bellwether when it comes to construction and the strength of the city of Lacey. However, in 2017, that was the first year the city had not built more than 200 homes since 2002. In 2018, we may or may not reach that mark or not, but this is an indicator that the residential market is starting to slow. And as we mentioned last year, we probably have maybe 3, maybe 6 years of residential properties left that we're going to develop. So we will not be a residential growth community as we have in the past. Now, one thing that has sort of taken off in recent years is multifamily construction. So as you can see, in 2016, there were 673 units built. That is 2.5 times more than the previous 14 years of multifamily construction within the city of Lacey. And in 2018, there's 381 units that are slated to be built, which is going to be another fairly robust year for multifamily construction. Now, one thing that we are watching, although the construction is good because you get one-time sales tax, but it's not necessarily a sustainable sales tax growth. This is a chart that shows our retail tax compared to our population growth. And really from 2008, you're seeing it dwindle. Part of that has to do with population growth, but part of it shows that we have a weakness in building new retail opportunities within the city of Lacey. It also could portend the fact that there are other shopping opportunities outside of the city of Lacey where people are shopping, either be it regional malls in Olympia or even further north. But that is a trend that we are watching, and it's something we need to worry about since 22% of our revenue base in the general fund is generated by sales tax. Now again, just another note of caution too. I think the retail future, and we've talked about this before in the past with council, is somewhat up in the air. Sears, unfortunately, used to be the largest retailer in the United States. They are now have declared bankruptcy early this month. Amazon is becoming, in a sense, the store for the entire United States when you think of how easy it is to have a Prime account and have goods delivered at your community. One thing we need to watch for too, though, when we think of traditional Main Street, a Wall Street Journal article talked about that 1 in 10 people are employed by retail. So as Main Street starts to dwindle, the kind of question mark is for communities our side is what happens to those jobs, and then what happens to that property value associated with those stores. So that is something that we'll need to watch in the future. So as I mentioned before, human resources and actually getting personnel back into our city budget is the centerpiece of the 2019 proposed budget, and I'd like to go through those. We are proposing 11 new positions within the city of Lacey for 2019. So first off is general fund positions. So the city of Lacey has always provided emergency management services, but right now this is spread over 4 different positions and 4 different departments. The idea would be consolidate that position into one person, and that person would be able to update our emergency readiness plans, update our training protocols, and represent the city at regional meetings. But more importantly, it will ensure that we're compliant with federal and state regulations. So if we ever do declare a disaster, we will be able to get reimbursement from the federal government. The other area that we're adding to is our public safety. We are adding 2 police officers for the 2019 budget. Additional officers and patrol has really remained relatively unchanged since 2009, so this will be an addition, although we did add 1 officer in 2018. The budget to provide 2 additional officers is going to run about $260,000 for this year's budget. So we've added a civil engineer, but it's really a project engineer to handle capital projects. The city is in need of a construction project manager. Every time that we have a project, for instance, when we did the covered bleacher project at the RAC, we're taking away from our utility projects, our road projects, and we just now reached a certain size that we need to have a dedicated resource to handle those general fund type activities. So that is an added position within the city of Lacey. Parks maintenance and irrigation system. Believe it or not, we have 75 irrigation systems within the city of Lacey. It has 10,000 sprinkler heads and 1,500 valves. And we have 1 parks maintenance irrigation person to handle all that. So we are actually going to absorb 2 seasonal positions within the Parks Department and actually add an irrigation assistant so we can better manage really that large irrigation system within the city of Lacey. The other area that we're going to be adding into the general fund is in our streets department. Staffing levels for the streets have really not changed since 2006. Lacey's street system has approximately 300 lane miles in 2006, and today it has about 383 lane miles. So crews will provide a variety of tasks, including general road maintenance, crack sealing, utility lid replacements, sidewalk work, and removal of side obstructions in the right-of-way. So those are all the general fund positions included in the 2019 budget. So next up is our water flushing program. And I think I need to explain some of these pictures so people don't get alarmed. But we do have a fairly robust program when it comes to our water flushing program. The reason we do that, we want to make sure that our pipes are clean and we're providing drinking water to our 50,000 residents. We can do about 100 miles of water main each year. We have not added to our crew really since 2006, 2009 area. The photos that you're seeing at the bottom, although that looks maybe like Coca-Cola, I won't describe what that looks like. That is actually a moment in time, so don't think that that runs for 20 minutes. But the point of doing a flushing program is to get those type of issues out of the pipe system, so we have a robust water flushing program. We'll be adding 2 journey level technicians to the water flushing program to actually get through the city on a more timely basis. The other area that we're adding to is our STEP system. So STEP systems stand for Septic Tank Effluent Pump Systems. They were first used back in 1989, and the last time that we included a position was back in 2006. In 2006, we had about 2,400 STEP systems. Today, we have about 3,300 STEP systems. As a result, we're going to add 1 journey level technician included. What these folks do is we are responsible for that STEP tank, and we will actually pump those out on a 2 to 3 year regular basis depending on the use. So you can tell that we have quite a maintenance responsibility with those systems. And then our internal service funds position, so this goes back to when we were talking about the fleet. Right now the city maintains about 260 various pieces of equipment. That includes mowers, dump trucks, police cars, street sweepers. 3 people are currently responsible for the maintenance and repair for all that pieces of equipment. The last mechanic that we hired, the city hired, was back in 2009. This budget would include another mechanic within the 2019 budget. Now, council always kind of asks, how do we compare when it comes to a size of our workforce? And I will freely admit this is not a perfect science. I'll add some disclaimers, but Lacey is right here. If we include those 11 positions, we'll have a workforce of 270 full-time equivalent positions. Olympia, which is fairly close to our population, would have roughly about 404 positions that do their work. Now, we did exclude 186 because they actually have other services that we don't provide directly, which is fire. They also do garbage pickup service. They have a parking service for their downtown. They include council as their, like an employee count, so that was taken out. Also, they have municipal court. So again, not necessarily an apples-to-apples comparison, but looking at like-size populations, this is kind of what their workforce count is. So Bothell, a little bit smaller than us, they have a little bit lower FTE count, and then Edmonds, about 9,000 population lower than we are, they're about 220. Lakewood, another comparison, they do not have a utility system, so they don't provide water, wastewater, stormwater. So we took that out of our count, and this is how we would compare it to the city of Lakewood, which is about 9,000 more than we are. Again, this is just a superficial look, but I think it's a question that council always wonders, and just want to provide that small snapshot. So on to the general fund. So general fund really is that service that everyone thinks about when they think about paying their property taxes. When it comes to going to our park system, our police, our streets, that is $49 million for 2019. This is an increase from the 2018 budget of just over $700,000. I'd like to kind of break down the major components in terms of how we fund the general fund. So taxes obviously are a major component at 58%, but when we take sales tax and property taxes, that combines about 36% of that revenue base. Permits and fees represent about $10 million. You can see that on the chart. This includes community development charges fees, so planning fees, building permits, parks and recreation fees, internal charges for public works to support capital projects, and overhead costs associated with our water utility. Shed revenue is the revenue that we receive from the state. This is fuel tax, liquor, criminal justice, and marijuana revenues, about $1.5 million. And then other is really more of an accounting issue, but that is where we put beginning balances in our other sort of 5 general fund accounts, as well as budget transfers that total over about $5.3 million. So again, just want to look at sales tax. Again, we talked about commercial development, how that's influenced sales tax. So we are going to be at about $11 million for the 2019 budget. That's our estimated sales tax collection. It's about a 3.5% increase. But again, I want to sort of show this correlation of commercial development. If we overlay commercial development in terms of what we've added in terms of square footage, there is at least a correlation that shows the upswing in sales tax and what we're seeing in commercial development. For property tax revenue, we are going to be collecting 6.74, which is our statutory authority. Property taxes for 2019 include $64,000, which represents the 1% limitation on last year's property tax, roughly $205,000 from new construction, and $55,000 from the 2018 refund levy. I will point out, too, the drop-off from 2010 to 2011. That's the year that Fire District 3 annexed the city of Lacey. Prior to that, we used to contract, and we used to take in a larger amount of property taxes to pay for that service. Council promised the public that if they were annexed, they would not charge that full amount, and that's why you've seen a reduction from 2010 to 2011. This just shows the property tax revenue levy rate from 2010 to 2019. You'll see it started at almost $1.90. Again, that's when we provided fire service through a contract. Then in 2011, we did not, and that falls it down. So our levy rate for 2019 is going to be roughly $1.07. So if you owned a home that was $300,000, this is the average home within the city of Lacey. You take your $300,000, the per thousand rate of $1.07, you'd be paying in city property taxes only about $378 on an annual basis for 2019. Now let me try to explain something. I'm going on a limb here. So it seems there's always confusion about property taxes in terms of why does my property tax go up or when it go down? What's the relationship with the levy rate and with the fixed amount when it comes to what the city collects in the regular rate? You also hear about things about the 1% limitation, and isn't my property tax limited by 1% on a yearly basis? So I try to use this as an example as if you were a business, you have fixed operating costs. That's what the wrench is supposed to represent. Then you have a bus, and since you're operating a bus with fixed costs, and you can spread the cost of operations on the amount of seats or tickets you can sell. So very similar in terms of what property tax is, if you want to use that as an illustration. Your operations is a city regular levy tax. That was at $6.7 million. That is a fixed cost, so that's a fixed number that the city of Lacey is allowed to collect. That is spread over the capacity or assessed valuation, and that determines your levy rate. So for example, this year's levy is $6.7 million. The assessed valuation of the city is $6.23 million. Each of these seats, in a sense, represent the capacity to spread that $6.7 million of the regular levy over the assessed valuation, and mathematically that turns into $1.07 per thousand ticket. So almost as you purchase a ticket on a bus, that's what it would cost. Now, conversely, if the assessed valuation shrinks, as it does during a recession, you now have less capacity to cover this fixed cost over this amount of money, so hence your levy rate is going to go up. So every time your assessed valuation goes down, your levy rate will go up because we still have to cover the cost of $6.7 million for the city of Lacey. And again, this is limited by 1%, but this is the amount of dollars that is spread over 4.5. Again, using this example, if your assessed valuation grows, then you have a larger area to spread that 6.7 million out, and then you have a 96 cents per thousand levy rate. So again, I just want to show that relationship in terms of how the property tax and the levy works. I'll keep working on an example as years come by. Here's another kind of interesting thing. People just want to know, where do their property taxes go? Now, I showed that the city of Lacey, that city taxes were going to be a $378, but this is where all your property taxes go. School district is the largest at roughly 44 cents, and this is a 2017 chart, followed by the state, followed by the fire district, and then followed by the city of Lacey. Now, I want to show 2017 to 2018. I'm going to flip back and forth. Notice that every property tax levy, because assessed valuation did grow, so your levy rate's going to go down essentially, but the share went down. So the school went down, the city went down, Thurston County went down, so did Fire District 3, Terminal Library went down, and so did Medic 1. So just for example. PUD and Port didn't because they have a fixed rate. However, the state went up. If you notice, they were at 15.7, and this year they're at 21.0 cents. That is the result of the McCleary decision, which people have cited that they've seen an increase in their property tax, and that's part of the direct result of that solution that the legislator had. So I just wanted to point that out in terms of what is driving some of the increases in property taxes. One final comment on property taxes. The city of Lacey also falls under an additional limit. This is referred to as the $10 limit. So essentially, state can take up to $3.60. Even a city can take up to $3.60. However, we have some other limitations on this. So we do not provide direct services for fire, which I mentioned earlier, nor do we provide direct services for library. If we did, we could take a full $3.60 for the levy rate. However, once you back those out, fire can have a max of $1.50. Library can take $50 cents. That's $2. So our max levy rate would be $1.60. Now we're further limited by 560. So if we ever have a down economy, we have to live within that 590, which is all the senior taxing districts as well as the junior taxing districts. So again, just wanted to point out that additional limitation on people's property taxes.
Did we ever figure out what the 50 cents is at the top?
We did. There is legislation that talks about, there are metropolitan parks districts that if they're over 150,000 in population, and if they voted for it, they can protect some of their compression in this 50 cents area.
Okay.
But this is our category that we fall into.
Yeah, so since we're under that, we don't.
Right. Okay. So again, we talked about revenues. This is where our major funding goes to in terms of expenditures. Public Works is our largest department, followed by Public Safety. Capital transfers, support services is the likes of finance, city council, city administration, Parks and Rec, and community development. There's about 82 full-time equivalent employees within Public Works, 65 in the police, and community development and parks have about 35 combined. I want to kind of look at just sort of what things cost. I think this is kind of interesting when people think about what does it cost to put, say, police on the road. So public safety, the public safety budget is 10.8. You saw a number that was 12.9, but that includes other components. But just for the police department itself, it's a $10.8 million operation. When you think of patrols and you're thinking of cop cars on the street, that costs about $6.5 million. When you think of prosecution, this is what it costs when someone is arrested and going through the court system. That's a $420,000 cost. When you think of court services, we do not have municipal court. We contract with Thurston County for district court. That's around $400,000. When there are folks who do not have legal representation that they cannot afford, that's indigent defense, and that's another $400,000. So that's also in that cost. And then we contract out with Nisqually Jail, and so that's a $912,000 cost, as well as medical to pay for that. So all totaled for public safety is about a $13 million proposition. Now, when it comes to maintaining our streets, we have a streets department. To take care of just sort of general maintenance on our roadway, the 363 lane miles, that's about a $1.3 million cost. When you look at street lighting, we have 5,000 street lights within the city of Lacey. That includes changing out light bulbs and actually the electrical bill for that. When you think of our signs and markings, we have 8,600 signs and markings within the city of Lacey. And so to take care of that, maintain that, make sure that they're visible, and if they become damaged, that's the sign and marking budget. We have about 213 miles of sidewalk, and so that budget there takes care if there's a sidewalk that's lifted, we'd go grind it down, make sure it's not a tripping hazard. And then we have the Transportation Benefit District, which voters approved in 2017, and that is a major effort to maintain our streets, and so that's a $6.5 million proposition for the 2019 budget. So when it comes to parks, here's another way to look at how we pay for our park system. So when we look at Parks and Rec, that is really the Parks and Recreation Department that provides our aquatics programs, our special events, our teens programs. That's at $2.8 million, and there's some fees associated with it, but that is the cost of running that department. So that's Jen Burbage's department, our Parks Director. When it comes to running the Regional Athletic Complex, that's an isolated portion within our budget. That's a $1.1 million cost in terms of operating the Regional Athletic Complex. And then Rainier Vista, which is probably our second most used park within the city of Lacey, that's just under a $400,000 operation in terms of mowing and maintenance and making sure that we're maintaining that park at proper levels. And then the remainder of our 1,200 acres that we maintain is really about a $5.6 million proposition for our park system. So that kind of breaks out some of the components of our park system. So what are the things that are included? These are kind of some quick highlights, and I'll go through. So we received a grant, actually a CMAQ grant, which is a congestion mitigation air quality grant for $326,000. We have $26,000 included in this year for some initial planning. We have slated for 2 charging stations at City Hall, 2 at the library, and potentially at the community center. There's been some discussion maybe that could be relocated to the RAC if that's a better location. We'll be deciding if those are level 2 or level 3 charges in the coming year. The other one is the Super T project. This is related to the Transportation Benefit District. This is a large road project for the city of Lacey. This is really the western city limits of Lacey. This is the Shays Western Trail. This is Yelm Highway. This goes to Ruddle Road. So that portion will be paved, and then College Street all the way up to 37th will be paved. We were fortunate. Public Works was able to get a $4.2 million federal grant, and then the remainder will be paid by transportation benefit dollars. Police Department is going through a needs analysis. The original police department, believe it or not, was dedicated in 1985, actually on September 11th, ironically. This has gone through various iterations and remodels, but it is in need of just sort of a revamp. So we are going to spend $68,000 for a comprehensive look of what our police station needs to meet our future demands for our community. RAC's fields 3 and 4, we have included infield placement. The RAC was dedicated in September of 2009. You may recall last year in 2018, we included fields 1 and 2 for the infield replacement. Council was wise enough to provide reserves, or actually save money for reserves, so we have one-time dollars to pay for these replacements. But this is just smart management to replace these infields. So this will be slated for 2019. Neighborhood Grant Program, we want our subdivisions and our homeowners associations to thrive. Last year we had $25,000 in this grant program to help with enhancements if it had meant replacing a mailbox that was broken or run into by a car, or even a stormwater pond that needed repair. And we've been giving out anywhere from $500 to $1,000 grants, so this actually doubles the amount that we did last year. So that has been a very popular program. This Mayor Gala is included in the budget. You may recall this was something that we started when we celebrated our 50th anniversary with the City of Lacey. There's $50,000 to pay for this event. This occurs every 2 years. The proceeds from this event actually benefit the Lacey Veteran Services Hub. The City of Lacey, as you know, has gone through various public records processes. We are in our, I'd like to think, our final stage of our public records project. Our next implementation is to buy an electronic content management system to help us manage our records that actually number in the millions. So we have $500,000 set aside to actually make sure that we can organize, file, and then make sure that we take care of our records as needed by state law. Mentioned city fleet in terms of replacing vehicles. So Stormwater has a VACON truck, the giant sucking truck that's included in this year's budget. That's about a $517,000 capital purchase. We also have 3 police cars that are up for replacement. Those cars cost about $63,000 per unit. The cars that we're replacing are fast approaching 100,000 miles. Scale-up program, you may recall the Small Business Administration cut back this program and we put $30,000 in the budget. We're again having this for the second year in a row to ensure that we can provide some assistance to our small business owners within the city of Lacey. And this is a partnership with the Economic Development Council of Thurston County. Lacey Veteran Services Hub, we have applied for a lease proposal with the Veterans Administration. We have the potential to have an outstation which provides behavioral resources at this site. We have to bid on that. Potentially, the federal government will pay for remodeling the interior of this building. So we do have dollars in the budget to make sure that if that does happen, that we can get reimbursed with the federal government. Hopefully we find out that here that we got that lease proposal in the next coming months, but we're prepared if they do in the budget. College Street Roundabout, you may remember this project because it's been in 8 previous budgets. However, we've had some right-of-way struggles, but we think we are near completion. This is going to be in the 2019 budget, and this is expected to start at least in 2019, but that's about a $3.8 million project, and that's a College Roundabout at 22nd and College. Lebanon Street is a road that's been identified for a while on our Transportation Improvement Program. This is Lacey Boulevard. This will extend the existing Lebanon Street on city property to Pacific Avenue. It will actually bridge Lacey Boulevard and Pacific Avenue. You may notice the site. This is also slated where the future museum is, right there. So this will be a project that will be bid for 2019. And then the sidewalk sucker. I can't think of a better name. Anyway, Public Works have looked at this. As you know, we have time to time have street trees. The roots will lift up the panels. And in trying to figure out a cost-effective way to deal with this on an ongoing basis, our typical approach is having to jackhammer out those panels, then clear the roots, and then maybe put new root barrier down and then re-pour panels. This actually has the ability to take a panel in one piece and preserve it. Then you could prep the ground, and then you can place the panel back over and hopefully save the cost. So that $47,000 includes the sidewalk sucker, a trailer, and also a mini excavator. So City of DuPont has had pretty good success with this, and Public Works wants to take a shot at this also. So council has obviously spent a lot of time and energy on talking about affordable housing and homeless initiatives, and there are a couple initiatives that I want to highlight in this year's budget. The first one is the city has identified surplus property that used to be used for utilities. So these properties range from anywhere from 1/4 to 3/4 of an acre. And the idea being is that we could potentially partner with a nonprofit and build an affordable housing unit. Council has talked about a potential partnership with North Thurston Public Schools and actually cite those tenants that are facing homelessness and put those on city property. So there's $150,000 that's been identified for that effort. Our goal is really to maximize that. If we can actually sell the lots and buy a bigger property, we'll take a look at that, but that's the initial look at that. The other item too, Salvation Army is obviously a regional asset to the area. They've been operating in Thurston County since 1889. They're actually going through a model this year, but we've been informed that they're also facing an operational deficit this year. And they've actually reached out to the local jurisdictions. Given the support and also the critical emergency service they provide for the region, we're putting $50,000 to help with our operational deficit issues in 2019. The other issue is that we have a fairly robust and progressive accessory dwelling unit. Sometimes these are called mother-in-law units. But most people have not taken advantage of those. There's about 2,300 potential lots within the city of Lacey that could potentially accommodate an accessory dwelling unit. The $25,000 there is really to develop a turnkey program where we can get a partnership with banks, with builders, and potentially nonprofits that could find tenants and approach maybe potentially willing property owners that would want to build an accessory dwelling unit and actually figure out a way that they can pay for the loan, the principal and interest, and then also have a tenant that would be screened by a nonprofit. So that's something that we're working toward to kind of address an affordable housing issue within the city of Lacey where the rents could potentially be less than $1,000. The other issue too, and unfortunately I think council is well aware of this, North Thurston Public School has an estimated, well, at least over 800 students facing homelessness in a variety of different ways. The North Thurston Public Schools had bought the old Bally's building, and what they're trying to do is create, in a sense, a student hub that will provide student services that can address homeless student issues and their services and those needs. So council, in partnership with North Thurston Public Schools, has dedicated $250,000 to help with that effort. So that is included in the 2019 budget. So I want to go through our utilities real quick. So again, in 2019, the proposed utility fund will be about $70 million. Again, this is a slight decrease from the previous year, and that has to deal really just with changes in capital expenditures. If you look at our three utilities, this is how they break out from maintenance and operation, capital, and debt. You can see in water is about a $28 million cost, and wastewater $33, and stormwater about $7.4 million. Wastewater, if you look at the $17.25 million in there, 2/3 of that, or $11 million, actually goes to LOT. LOT is the provider that pays for the treatment of effluent within the city of Lacey, and the remainder goes to the wastewater operations within the city of Lacey. If you just look at our customer base for the three utilities, water is the largest with about 25,000. You'll notice that stormwater does not have any customers in the urban growth area because that service is provided by Thurston County. But again, 25,000, 18, and then 15,000 in terms of our customer base. So when we look at the utilities, I just wanted to point this out that there's $250 million worth of assets when it comes to the combined water, wastewater, and stormwater. And some just sort of key statistics when you think of the complexity and how large these utilities are to provide essential services to our residents. We have 20 wells that operate within the city of Lacey to provide water, 7 reservoirs, 6 booster stations, and over 400 miles of water main. And then likewise on the wastewater side, you have 48 lift stations with 3,300 step tanks and over 200 miles of sewer main. And then on stormwater, we have 5,200 catch basins and related inlets, 47 stormwater ponds, and over 100 conveyance for stormwater. So again, that just sort of gives you a snapshot of how large some of these systems are within the city of Lacey. When you look at utility rates, this is always a question. Council may recall that we have rates established up until 2019, so there won't be any rate decisions until 2020. But the program rates for 2019 for water is going to be $33.66, $61.10 for wastewater, and $11.36 for stormwater, for a total of $106. I will point out there's about $39.80 within wastewater that goes to LOT. So that's a transfer that goes to, once you pay your utility bill, that goes to LOT every month. So some of the things that we have, as I mentioned before, utilities actually have a very robust capital construction budget, and I'll go through some of the key projects that we're looking at. So Capital City has a water and sewer project that's been identified. This is the first phase of the planning. There is fire flow issues within the Capital City area, which we need to upgrade their water mains. Council's had a discussion about the need to put sewer in there, given the fact that we have well 4, and we want to protect that water resource. So that will be in the 2019 budget. There'll be a multi-year effort, so you'll see this in subsequent budgets. Madrona well pH treatment is a $500,000 project. Obviously, our water needs to be neutral. So what this is trying to do to ensure that our water does not negatively interact with any household fixtures that could leach copper or lead. And so Madrona wells will be the first one to receive a pH treatment facility. We have 2 more planned in the coming years. Ultimately, that would be about a $2 million project within the water system. Lift Station 15 is located off Galaxy Drive. This serves the LA Fitness and Walmart area, just in terms of location. This will upgrade the electrical panel, also provide an on-site generator to ensure that it will operate during power outages. Marvin Road well will be one of our newest wells that we'll add to the city of Lacey. This is located off 41st and Marvin Road. That corner property is actually adjacent to the future high school for North Thurston Public Schools. That's about a $1.3 million project. That well should produce about 1,000 gallons per minute once complete. Mullen Road water main, the county has a planned road construction project really from Rumac all the way to Carpenter. So we are going to work ahead of that and put a water main in that. That will be upgrading water mains up to 12 and 16 inches in that area. That's a $1.4 million project. I mentioned before in terms of reliability of our lift stations, it's imperative that we put on-site generators on those locations. So we have 7 locations that we have identified to ensure that those lift stations still operate when there's a power failure. Anyone who's ever lived here, for a number of years, we've had days where there's been 3 or 4 days for power outages, and a lift station has a limited ability to actually keep up with effluent if it does not run on a continuous basis. So that will be a needed project. That's about a $1.8 million project in wastewater. Lift Station 21 is another rehab project. This is located off Pacific Avenue by the Mayan Restaurant. Again, this will get an on-site generator as well as an upgraded electrical panel and other improvements to the lift station. Golf club water improvements, that is a $2.2 million project. This project will include about 2,000 linear feet of force main and about 4,000 linear feet to replace the concrete gravity main that's in that area. Unfortunately, this is a fairly big and disruptive project, so there will be traffic disruptions during that time, but that's a 2019 project. We have $250,000 set aside for the Stormwater Comprehensive Plan update. Wastewater as well as water also are in need of an update. It's been 6 years, or will be 6 years, since those plans have been updated. And those plans are important to actually look at our future need for both of those, or actually all 3 utilities, and actually identify those capital improvements that will be needed to keep up with those utilities. And then Union Mills, believe it or not, that's a reservoir that was built in 1969. It's steel. We've done an analysis of it, and we need to improve the foundation of which that reservoir sits on to ensure that there is an earthquake, it does not have failure. And so we have slated a $1 million budget to actually improve the foundation and footings for that project. This actually was included in last year's budget, but you may recall that there are cell carriers on top of that reservoir, and we've been having some scheduling issues, so we hope to get it done for 2019. So lodging tax, I wanted to share with you. So as mentioned earlier, this is one of those special funds. So lodging tax budget is about $592,000. We have 8 hotels within the city of Lacey, 652 rooms. Don't go, don't. Well, just get to the good part. It's all good, it's all good. So this is the amount of money that we collect for our hotel motel. 4% is the charge when you have a room within the city of Lacey. This just shows a breakout of reserves and interest for the 2019 budget. So we have 21 total organizations that the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee has recommended to council to fund. I'm not going to go through all of those, but I will point out a couple. The Jazz Festival is back. You may recall that they did not hold their event in 2018, so they're coming back in 2019, so they received $40,000. The VCB had asked for an enhancement to deal with sports commission activities, so the Lodging Tax Committee recommended $20,000. An organization called Got Game, Get Game is going to hold a youth basketball tournament, and they asked for $20,000. That was awarded by the Lodging Tax Committee. And then the final one is the Mega Goal Soccer Tournament. That's a combination of the Lacey Pocket Gophers as well as a soccer tournament, and $30,000 was allocated to that organization. So that was in the 2019 lodging tax recipients. So I want to talk about debt. And I think council should be proud in terms of how they manage the public dollars when it comes to the amount of debt that we have. So I'm going to show this area chart for you. What that $430 million represents is really our statutory capability to leverage $430 million of debt. So by law, we can actually leverage $430 million of debt. However, because of council prudence and fiscal responsibility, we have basically less than $20 million worth of debt as of 2017. If you put that in comparison, the United States has $20 trillion of debt. But I think that's something to be proud of. That's about that's less than 5% of our statutory authority in terms of the ability to leverage debt. So I think that's a good story and something to be shared more often with the community. This is a kind of a snapshot of the debt that we have outstanding. We have some revenue bonds. We have some voter-approved issues. One was for fire, some for parks. I will point out those voter-approved. Here's that impact on the excess levy, which equates to about 18 cents per 1,000. So again, this is our total outstanding balance of 2017. That will actually go down again because we'll make a payment at the end of this year. And our payments annually are about $2.4 million. And just to point out, by 2026, those will be retired. Those 3 voter approved from the current standpoint, so that would actually shave 18 cents given today's levy rate off of our property taxes. So kind of a quick wrap up, just kind of 2 slides. Council always kind of wants to know what's the impact of property tax owners when you compare last year's budget to this year's budget. So it's about a $5 increase if you go from last year's levy rate, which is $1.32. And again, to point out the fact that our assessed valuation went up, that's why the levy rate went down. And then if you look at the increase in assessed valuation, which is about 6.6%, so assume your house was $300,000, then it would increase about $319,000. And then this is what you would pay in terms of your city property taxes. The other number I had was 378. It did not include excess levy rate, but this does include both the regular levy rate as well as the excess levy rate. So in terms of the total budget impact, when you think of property taxes, water rate increases, wastewater, stormwater, that equates to about a $2.89 per month impact. So we are coming toward the end of the presentation. For public participation, there is a revenue hearing that will be discussing property taxes. Again, if we had utility rates on that agenda, or if we had utility rates that were not programmed for 2019, utility rates would be part of the discussion, but this will be limited to property taxes since those have already been set. On November 15th, we'll have our first public hearing. On that same date, we'll be asking council to adopt the property tax ordinance to levy the state limit on our ability to do our regular levy rate as well as excess levy rate. We have a final public hearing slated for December 6th. And then council is scheduled to take final action on the budget on Thursday, December 20th. For those that wanted to dig deeper into the budget, that can be found on our website under in our records under the library section of our website, and you can go through all the detail of the budget. I do want to take this time before I kind of wrap up and just really thank the executive team for pulling together the 2019 budget. It takes a lot of effort, months of preparation. I do want to call out Mr. Pierpoint. This is his last city council meeting as well as his budget meeting. He informed me he was going to show up to future budget presentations, so this maybe won't be the last time we see him. But anyway, I just want to thank Dusty. Been great to have him for chief here for 13 years. He's had a 33-year outstanding career with the city of Lacey. He's going to be well missed, so appreciate that. Mr. Wu, as always, I think last year I called him my budget fiscal friend for BFF. We become very intimate as we prepare the budget for the coming year, so I could not do this presentation or actually deliver you a balanced budget without his help. I'd like to call out part of his financial team, which Christy Wolf and Chelsea Yarwood. They are instrumental in actually getting all the budget books together, checking the facts, working on salaries, working all the line items, so that is very helpful. And again, I didn't do this slide presentation by myself. That's to Donna Feliciano, who's not here. So she deserves a lot of credit for actually pulling this presentation together so it's actually not so boring. I mean, I did lose the Boy Scouts, but I appreciate the rest of you guys staying here for a while. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Deputy Mayor?
You know, because we passed phase 2 of the regional climate adaptation plan, is there additional funding in the 2019 for going forward with that? And if so, where? I've had a hard time finding
Right.
it.
You know, there's not, we've paid for phase 2, that's in the 2018 budget. I guess we're still waiting for the outcomes. I know you had someone come before you tonight to say maybe we should not wait. I mean, EV stations kind of fit in that category, but I guess we're still waiting for what the public input process is going to be to identify what are those items that would be most beneficial. I think that's something to be handled through a budget amendment once we have a clear idea what City Council wants to support.
Okay, it would be an addendum to that. Okay.
So, first of all, we know Troy and his team did the majority of the work, so.
Wow.
Thank you, Troy, and your team.
Just wear a yellow tie.
That being said, during our pre-budget workshop, the council talked about bringing back our public art program. And so I was trying to find that in the budget, and I couldn't find that either. So I was just wondering where it's at and what's the status of that. And
So it's not programmed in this year's budget. We do have, is it $26,000 in reserves? Is that?
It's 70, so we're
Okay.
$1 per capita per year, the target.
And so are we going to be bringing that back, $1?
So that could be a council discussion as we go through the budget process if you want to make that official policy. It had been in the past, and we'd actually withdrawn from that. If you
I know,
want.
I was pretty sure this council agreed that we'd want to bring that back.
Thought so too.
Also, our last joint work session last week, we were discussing what to do with a joint venture with the school district when it comes to compassionate community.
Yeah.
Maybe that's an avenue, public art.
Yeah. So, yes, I think this council would agree that we would like to bring it back at that rate.
Okay.
And typically, we've handled that through the reserve discussion. So each year we look at the council reserves and you commit those reserves. So that's how we funded it the last 2 years.
Okay.
So we could certainly do that as you discuss reserves, probably early next year.
Okay. I think as a placeholder, we would like you to bring that policy back.
Okay.
So that may need change in the budget a little bit. Yes.
Hypothetically, this question is in regards to the debt service for the parks. So if Prop 1 was to pass, do you think it's feasible to pay that debt towards the parks off early or some?
Yeah, so you may recall that we refinanced the parks instruments last time, and by bond covenants, they are expected to receive a certain amount of interest, so we cannot pay those off early. We did refinance those, so we did get the benefit of a lower, basically, interest rate for the public, so I did save money, but we would not be able to retire those earlier than the maturity dates that I identified.
Pretty sure. Deputy Mayor?
So one more thing. We've completed our bike pedestrian plan, and has that any kinds of projects or whatever we would do with that, has that been put in the budget at all?
It hasn't. It's not been slated for the 2019. That's a future discussion, but you're absolutely right. We now have a roadmap on what those bike facilities could be. So it'd be it should be an ongoing discussion. We'll probably have to have a deeper dive with council in terms of what that program would look like.
Okay.
I think it was about a $26 million effort. I'm looking at Scott. Isn't that about what the program looked like?
Okay.
In regards to fleet vehicles replacement, we auction off those vehicles that are being retired, I take it, and is it any substantial amount that can be recovered?
You do. It all go back into the equipment rental fund when we do. We actually will hold on to vehicles too, just to supplement the fleet. So we may not, if it's still useful, we'll still try to carry that on without having to buy an additional vehicle. But yeah, we do sell those at auction, state auction, and get whatever salvage value is left over. We have a pretty good track record of keeping vehicles plus 10 years. And as I mentioned about the police vehicles having 100,000 miles, I think that's just what the public expects, to make sure that when we're using those assets that they're either well used, that we're not, turning those over too quickly.
Councilmember Hearn?
Two questions. First, on the, could we go to the slide, the snapshot FTEs? Please.
It's even better backwards, isn't it?
It is.
Again, the disclaimer is that's not a perfect apples-to-apples comparison.
I won't be picky. I just have a clarification question. They're not numbered.
There we go.
Okay, thanks. So just for my clarification, for example, and this is an interesting slide, so thank you. The 270 FTEs that Lacey has,
Right.
compared to, say, Olympia that has 404. Is that adjusted to 404 less 186 because
Correct.
those FTEs don't really apply?
Correct. So they have 590 is what their count is.
Oh, their count is 590.
Correct.
So 404 is the net.
Right. So we excluded the things that we don't provide as an attempt to try to make it somewhat equal. But again, you know, we didn't take
That, you know, I kind of blows me away, but that's pretty efficient comparison on our side. I was wondering if it was the other way, but it's not, so.
Right. And again, the disclaimer is when you have a larger organization that has fire and courts and solid waste, garbage pickup, and you're going to have larger finance departments, larger administration, those type of things. But, you know, they have also probably a better or bigger daytime population than we do too, given the employment base that they have. So again, it's not a perfect example, but I know council's asked about this in the past, and so we kind of took a stab at it.
I think it does show, those numbers do, even though it's an estimate, that, you know, the amount of outsourcing that's done in a city for services and whatnot can be pretty cost-effective for our taxpayers.
That's interesting,
So,
to say the least.
and then next question, did I miss it? Was there a slide on population trends?
I did not include it this year.
I'd be curious to know, because that, we talked about the building trends, we talked about the taxing trends, we talked about lots of trends, because population trends is also, because I know we're hitting a trigger point where we qualify, we're kind of in the next size city where we qualify for more granting, et cetera.
Right.
So I'd be curious to see some data on that, please.
Yeah, we've been averaging about 2 to 3% growth for the last 10 years. But again, I don't see that continuing given the residential outlook. At some point, we're going to stop building homes, and at some point, you're going to have that available land, and then I think we'll be really transitioning from a development-oriented community to more of a maintenance community.
But we have a real-time census, right? Because we know how many citizens are on.
Right, and that's
rolls.
at least marked by the 50,170. And then there'll be, obviously, in 2 years, there'll be another census.
Stop going out and start going up.
Yeah. Well,
Right.
and we still have quite a big UGA that we need to annex, so that's.
Yeah, and our UGA really applies to our
Right.
business, so.
Right.
Thank you.
Rachel or Carolyn have any questions?
Good,
Okay.
thanks.
Deputy Mayor?
I have one very small thing just to.
Was this a compliment for Troy?
No, well, him, but, no, actually, with the EV, we're replacing two and then adding more, correct?
That is
Yeah.
true, right.
Yeah.
So we'll actually have, the issue with the EV stations that we have, they're just essentially 120 outlets. And
Right.
if you need to charge for a 15 or 20-minute period, which is, you know, that's would be considered even long at the Lacey City Hall, this would at least give you maybe 20, 30 miles of power. So that's why the level 2 or level 3.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
This is kind of, you know, nitpicking, but when it came to engineer position, you're saying that our engineers now are being occasionally taken off projects to do something, and those projects have to go on hold or whatever.
Yep.
I'm assuming the new position, the new civil engineer, if that person's workload lessened, they would be able to help out the existing.
Absolutely. Yeah, so just for clarity, so if there's not a general government type project, then they would then transfer over to utilities and actually help out with that workload. Right.
At the end.
Okay. Well, I think we're there. I would suggest that we try to do the level 3 charging stations if we're gonna try to be effective at all. For someone who's an EV driver, there's a big difference between, you know, a 30 amp level 2 station, which would take you, you know, 5 hours to charge, which is really not practical at all unless you're staying overnight or gonna be shopping for hours on end. So, you know, if we're gonna implement charging stations, they should be used. So, unfortunately, you know, the level 3 charging stations are the ones that are used because you can, you know, charge your car in about 45 minutes, and you can get, you know, over 100 miles in about 45 minutes. So,
I would also back that same thing, but I would put like have them only be level 3 and have a limit of like 2 hours max.
Yeah, that's what
So you
they,
got time to have your lunch or whatever.
that's what they usually do, is
And,
put max.
and I would agree in the rack, and that way the 3 different spots would be spread out more consistently throughout the city.
I know we've applied for some grant funding for that too, so there's some of that's coming in, but.
Right.
Is there anything else? Carolyn?
Thank you. I have in front of me a ballot that I just filled out today, and I'm putting it in the ballot drop box outside City Hall tonight. And I just want to encourage every person in this room, every person watching this program to vote. You know, your vote is your say in what happens with your local government. It's so important. So no matter who you vote for, up or down on ballot issues, just please vote. Thank you.
Thank you for that reminder. And with that, we've reached the end of our agenda. And so, as always, you keep it classy, Lacey, and I'm gonna call this meeting adjourned.